Hello my friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works Workshop. Our first ever live shop talk in the afternoon. At least that's the first one I can remember. And hope that you're out there and going to join me shortly, because as I see right now we have 0 viewers. So hopefully I'll start seeing those pop up. Looks like Paul Walton was the first one to pop up here. Well, maybe Richard Harrington. I'm not really sure if he's out there live or if that was from a carryover. Jerry Frazee, and then Papa is just Papa from California. Reg D. Okay, well that's in order, and that's about as many as I'm going to mention. But it looks like we're up to 38 already, so that worked out real well. Change in plans is kind of what the title of this was. Well, you know, I always tell you, if it can happen, it will. And, you know, I've been kind of looking forward to playing that show for those kids for, well, several months now. I'm going to show you some video of that here in just a minute, how the road is all flooded. Don't worry, we don't have to worry about getting flooded here at the farm. It's just that our county road coming into the farm floods. And it gets covered by, you know, well, anywhere from 6 inches up to 20 feet, sometimes, of water. Maybe not 20 feet, but 10 or 12 feet anyway. So either, and we don't get any mail or UPS deliveries, and wouldn't you know, I'm waiting on a couple of those. So I have to wait till the flood goes down, and that's probably going to be Monday or so before that happens. Well, they're rolling in here fast now. We got up to 81. One of the reasons this morning, but then that's a lot of switching back and forth, and that makes for confusion. So that's one reason I didn't do that. But the second reason I didn't change it back to the morning time frame was I wanted to see what the attendance would be like in the afternoon, to see if it would turn out that more people could watch. And if that's the case, well, we might do more in the afternoon and maybe less in the morning. Don't know. You just never know how that's going to work out. I'm going to read my obligatory statements here, and then we'll move into a couple of things. I don't have a lot planned on this shop talk, so what I wanted to say right up front is if you can think of anything in the shop you'd like to see a little more detail on, like a tool or a technique or something like that, that I could demonstrate here live, you know, be sure to put it in the comments with some question marks in front of it, and I'll switch gears and we'll move into that. So if you have anything like that, be sure to say it in the comments. As you probably already know, we play every Tuesday evening at Dickey's Barbecue here in Rolla, Missouri at 6:30 p.m. So come by if you can anytime you're in the area. Rolla, Missouri is right on Highway 44. So if you're traveling across the state, at least in the lower part of the state, you're pretty much going to go right through Rolla. And let's see, our band is going to be playing a local festival, and I have a link to that, so we might as well just jump to that right now. We're going to be playing the Liberty Life Bluegrass Festival, and if that sounds at all familiar to you, those of you who really pay attention and know what's going on, you'll know that that's Melissa's festival that she's starting at her campground. Liberty Life is the name of her campground that she started. So, and for those that entrepreneurial spirit, and she wanted to start her own business, and so she bought a campground and has been fixing it up, and is going to have her first Bluegrass Festival there on May 27th and 28th. And one of the bands that will be featured will be yours truly, Rosa String Works Band. And there are flyers on her website, and I have a link in the description of this video to these flyers. If y'all could come out, we'd sure appreciate it if you can support it. It's a nice campground. It's right on the Big Piney River. And, you know, it's good fishing, good floating, and all that kind of stuff. My only concern with it is the weather. You know, this time of year, it can be. I know Melissa's working really hard to make it really nice. There's going to be a lot of food vendors and things like that. So it sounds like a big deal. And if you're in the area on that weekend, come on down. We would love to have you. And I tell you what, if there's at least 2 or 3 of you come up to me down there, and if you say, hey, I'd love to have a one-on-one mandolin session with you, we'll make sure we do that. You know, so in other words, if somebody's learning to play the mandolin and you're there and you see me and you stop me, and if we could get a couple of people together, I'll do a little group lesson or something. If that works out, great. If not, no problem. We'll just do what we're doing. Okay, that's about the festival. Just some more information is that we're going to be down in Mountain View, Arkansas, just jamming for fun down there, just a group of friends on June 9th through the 12th. So if you want to go down to Mountain View, Arkansas and jam with us, we would love to have you. Andrew Keppel made a super chat there. And he's got a question mark with it. It says, have you ever done an oval hole carved top mandolin? No, I have not. And how would I carve the channel for the Rosette? Well, you're talking about for the inlay around the Rosette. I would probably do it by hand, actually. Well, here it is. I have, this purfling cutter. It's a little jig. This would be the thing that would travel around the sound hole. So you'd go right around your sound hole like this, and then these little tiny cutting blades that are in here. There's 2 of them in there right now. Now you could use 2 at one time, but I typically don't. I just put 1 in there, cut one side of the little purfling slot, and then I'll move the cutter to the other side of the purfling slot, and then trace the hole again. And then you just take a little tool and you dig out between the 2 cuts, and that's how you put your purfling in there. So that's how I would do it. That's how I cut the channel. So Andrew, thank you for that super chat, and I appreciate it. Anybody that's going to give me a super chat and put a question in there, I'm going to go straight to that. So thank you. Just general channel news. Our subscriber level has just flattened out. It has just died again. It's so funny how it goes in spurts like that. I mean, there are times when it just goes straight up a hill, and other times it just goes like that, and it just levels out for no apparent reason that I can figure out, other than maybe I'm just not that interesting right now. I don't know. It could just be that simple. And the watch time has fallen steadily over the last month. It's just kind of gone downhill, But then again, that's done that before too, so you just never know. All right, I mentioned to you. Well, let me see here. I've got before we go into the flood video here, I've got an email that I just thought I'd show you real quick. I'm going to read it here because I don't think you're going to be able to read it there on the screen, but it's from John Neese, K-N-E-E-C-E, and he says, "Wow to the 10th. Watch the YouTube you made there where the old Gibson was repaired and reset." Now, I don't know which one that is because there's been dozens. Totally impressed. Makes me know how much is not perfect on some of my axes. He says he has a low-end Fender Tim Armstrong model. He says it's brand new, and supposedly it came set up, but he says the frets are really hurting his fingers, the strings. Anyway, he says, thanks for the video. It was great. He says, I believe you surely are qualified to dub a situation as perfect. So I think that's funny because I made such a big deal out of that in that one video, how the one guy from Australia said, I'm out of here. You call everything perfect. I'm just out of here. And I thought, well, perfect. That's what I was thinking. Clyde Lewis. Oh, wow. Another super chat with a question. I see a trend. Jerry, thanks for having the afternoon show. Could you demonstrate your scraper and the way you put burr on the edge? Yes, I can. I say I can. Now all I have to do is find it. And usually laying right there, but of course, because someone asks, oh, here it is, it got stuck between two other things. All right, well, I typically use this scraper. Now, this was quite a bit bigger. This thing is quite old now. I don't know how old it is, but I'm going to say it's 25, maybe almost 40 years old. I mean, I've had it a long time. I really don't know when I got it. But it used to be quite a bit bigger. And what I do, now, the standard normal way to do a scraper, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not knocking it, you understand. I'm just showing you how I do it, which is different than the standard traditional way of doing a scraper. The standard traditional way of doing a scraper is you basically square the edge off perfectly square and flat. And then you take a burnishing tool and you work both corners off, and you rub both of those corners off, and so that you could use either side of your scraper, because both corners get burnished a little bit. And that does work, and it works fine, but it's not the edge that I get, and I don't think it scrapes like the scrapers that I sharpen. Now, the way I sharpen them is much more complicated, much more time consuming, it's much more difficult. This is the one thing I sharpen that takes me time. Everything else I sharpen, I can do it in a minute and a half. This takes, 30 minutes sometimes. But it's only because of this screwy, curved blade, and, it's a long edge and it's curved, so it takes a lot longer to sharpen it. But anyway, what I do is I just work a long bevel on it. You can see the bevel there. I think you can see it. On this side, no bevel. See, it's absolutely flat. This side, a very long bevel. So and that's just depends on which hand you are, if you're right-handed, left-handed, which way you want it to hold the scraper. I like to hold it like this, so I, bevel this side here because I'm pulling it towards me this way, and you can see how I'm pulling it this way, so the flat edge is toward me when I'm using it. Well, anyway, what I do is I sharpen it just as razor sharp as I can get it, and I pretty much just do that with a whetstone and my leather. And once I get it just razor sharp, then I take a burnishing tool and this is a honest to goodness burnishing tool. That's what it's made for. It's a very hard piece of steel. It's very slick, and then I rub it right around that beveled edge, and I, burnish that edge over so that edge curls. Now, and again, you're curling it towards the flat side. So I know you can't see it, but I can feel that curl right there. It's curled over right on the very edge. And that curl is just sharp as it can be, and then you can just use it like this to scrape your wood. And like I use this for scraping finishes off. I use it for contouring the actual carvings, or after I've carved it with a finger plane, for instance, I'll smooth it with this. These things are invaluable, and learning how to use them is invaluable when you're doing it from scratch like I do. If you're doing it CNC, I would still probably end up using this, but to smooth it out, to be honest. But it's different if you're doing a lot of the work mechanically. But if you're doing it all by hand, these things are absolutely 100% invaluable. You just need to have one, and you need to learn how to use it. Could you do it with sandpaper and without the scraper? Yeah, you probably could, but the scraper makes your life much easier. Yeah, it's a pain to sharpen the darn thing, but once you get it sharp, it's worth its weight in gold. It really is. It shaves and smooths the wood so easy and so quick. Okay, well, I hope, Clyde, that answers your super chat question there. Thank you very much for the question. And for the contribution. I appreciate it. Okay, let me go to my flood video. I shot this morning around 7:45, 8 o'clock, somewhere in there. Well, here's what our road looks like this morning. Now, this isn't the lowest point in the road. This is just a low point. So I would guess this water here is about 8 inches deep, 10 inches deep, something like that. Maybe a foot deep. I doubt it's a foot deep. But anyway, on down the road further, you can possibly tell the road turns this way, and down that way about another half mile, there's a much lower point where the water could be at least a foot deep down there. So that's why I ended up canceling my show this morning for the school. I didn't want to take a chance on whether I could get out or not. More than likely I could drive through this, but I just didn't know that yesterday, and the school wanted a firm commitment, so they decided to go ahead and cancel so they could make other plans. But yeah, it is kind of a hassle, and it looks like it's going to rise more the way I understand it, so more than likely we'll be flooded in all weekend is what it sounds like. So I have a feeling this is going to get deeper by the minute. And here's what our creek looks like. You can see it's flowing almost like a small river. There's where my martins live over there. And here's what it looks like coming out. You can see it widens up quite a bit here. This gets kind of flat and low. And you can possibly see that it has flooded out into this area here. But that's not really significant. Obviously we would prefer it didn't do that, but it's not a big deal. So our farm, you don't have to worry if you're concerned about us getting in a flood. We're not really going to get in a flood at all. I mean, this creek could, slightly flood its banks, I suppose, but you can see how wide it actually has gotten. It's gotten up to this high here and this high here. But it still would have to go another 4 feet or so before it would actually flood this field. And even then, it wouldn't really hurt much if it did flood the field. So, and the river itself is down this way, and I would say we're at least 50 feet above that low spot that I showed you earlier on the county road. So it would have to really flood to even sort of threaten the farm. And if that should happen, well, it would be a really bad day in south central Missouri. And here's a flood pic that I took just 30 minutes before we went live. I drove down there and took a picture, and you can see that it's quite a bit further down the road now. That far curve down there now is underwater. So it's come up at least another 6 inches. So I would say it's probably 18 inches to possibly 2 feet in the lowest place on the road. That's probably how deep it is. So yeah, it's a situation, and we have to live with it. I knew that when I bought the farm. I also knew that the farm itself doesn't flood. I wouldn't have bought the farm if I had known it could flood. But no, it doesn't flood. I'm not worried about it. Now, there's creeks and stuff that can flood on the farm, and like the creek that flows under our house, I guess potentially could be a problem. But I have Horvath? Probably butchering your name, Jeremy, I'm sorry. Can you demonstrate your knife sharpening technique? Well, yeah, I can. It's about the same as what I just told you on the scraper, really. Now, I do, my technique is I sharpen primarily on one side. The other side gets a small bevel, a small sharpening. I don't leave it completely flat like I do on the scraper. So, I work that down. Now, I don't want this to sound conceited, but it's going to sound that way, I think. I am very good with a grinder. Probably better than just about anybody you're ever going to know. And the truth is, I've been using a grinder since I was in the 4th grade. I used to sharpen lawnmower blades for my dad's lawn service, and have used them. I grew up with a grinder. I know how to use a grinder really super well. So I don't have a problem with taking almost anything on a grinder. Your finest chisel, your finest knife, anything. So this knife was provided to me by one of you wonderful viewers, and I honestly can't remember the name right now. I know it if I heard it, but I can't think of it. Anyway, it's a lock blade knife. It's a Smith & Wesson. Eddie gave me one that I really liked that you saw where I built a new blade for it. But unfortunately, I didn't build the blade with a edge that stays as sharp as I want. I mean, it's better than the original blade, but it's not as good as this one. This one stays sharp much better. So I started carrying this one. This one had the serrated edges in it, which I see no benefit of that at all. I guess I'm just old school, but I got no use for serrations in a blade. So I took this to my grinder and just ground it right off and just put a little bevel on there. Then I just took it to my stone, and for the most part, I only use the fine side of the stone. This one has the 3 grades. It's got coarse, medium, and fine. 99.9% of the time, I'm just using the fine. And I do it, everything I do is old school technique. I just use oil and put it on there. I don't use water. A lot of people do that, and that's, you know, fine if that's your preference. I don't have any problem with any of those other techniques, and I'm not talking any of those other techniques down. I'm just telling you how I do it because it's the way I've always done it, and it's just that simple. Nothing pro or con to the others. So anyway, I just put the the oil on there, and and then I just most of the time I go toward the blade. Actually, so in other words, I don't know if I can demonstrate this very well, but I'm pushing into the blade more than I'm pulling. I'll do a rotating motion sometimes like this, but I usually am pushing into the blade, and you can it's almost like you're shaving the stone, and it really cuts faster. And then, I'll do it like that. And then once I, feel like I've got it where I want it, then I really do whet it a lot on the leather. And some people say that leather doesn't do anything, but it does. It will definitely, if you do it long enough, just like this, just a technique. And I try to get the whole blade on the leather like that, and it's just a very fine hone is what it really is. And I go ahead and let oil get on here and everything. I don't even wipe when I go straight from here to here. I don't wipe the oil off. I let the oil actually go into the leather. It's good for the leather and good for this process. And the very, very fine stone grit gets in your leather too. And so it's really a super, super fine little hone over time. And it just works really good. And so that's my technique for a knife. It's my knives are always pretty dang sharp. So it'll cut just about anything it looks at. I hope that answers your question there, Jeremy. Thank you for asking, and thank you for the super chat there. Let me see. I think, believe it or not, I think I'm done with everything I had formally to present this morning. Well, actually, I thought I'd just show these things. I know I've shown them in videos. I know you've seen them before, but I thought I'd just show you this again, just for the new people especially, that like they make all kinds of expensive, fancy things to hold a guitar by the neck or whatever, and you can rotate it and all this craziness. Well, here's just as simple as it gets. And you can do you just take, what I did was I just took a square thing here. If I'd had a long enough piece of this, I would have just put the whole square thing right up here and welded it to the clamp. But I just had a blade of steel here, and then I had this little short piece. And the reason I wanted that in there is so that way I can clamp it in the vise at 90-degree angles and switch it around, whichever way I want to turn it. And then this deal here is padded with leather. And so, like so in other words, for a guitar, I would probably use this in here. For a mandolin, I don't. I have it shaped like that, see? So I just put that in there for the guitar then. And then you can, put a pad on top of this. And so in other words, your fretboard would be under the clamp here. And you can just lay your guitar neck in there. And then you can work on the body. Like if you're putting binding on your body or something and you just want to have a way to hold it real still, this will definitely do it. Very cheap, very simple. You don't have to spend hundreds of dollars for some real fancy guitar holding device. So that's one there I wanted to show again. I know you've seen it before, but I just think it's worth showing. And then another thing that's really expensive if you go buy a good one, a couple $100 or so, is this thing. And this one here I made on the cheap. I just bought this billet of aluminum. I cut this little piece out right here. That's, it just used to be a square piece of aluminum. I cut it out right here, and it's hard to see it, but I slotted it right here. I can't probably show that very well, but there's a slot in there where the back of this little meter has a tang on it, so I just made a slot big enough to put these screws through the tang and tighten it up. And then this is just a piece of aluminum that rotates right there. It lifts the plunger up and down. That's all it is. It's got a little slot cut in the top of it here so that it can slide as you're doing this. Doesn't lock up. Very simple. This meter, you can buy these cheap. They measure in thousands of inches, or you can get them in hundreds of millimeters, or whatever you prefer. You can get your meter, and they're like $20 or less. And the piece of aluminum was roughly probably $20 or less. And all I did was just attach it to a base here. And so you can make your own. Yeah, it's quite a bit of work, but with all the tools I have, this didn't take very long to make. I mean, it was just a few minutes for me. Might be a few hours for you, but then again, a few hours will save you maybe a couple hundred, So, there's that. Since I showed this one, let me go ahead and get the other one and show you that I made, that I even probably like as well or better. Let me show you the other one. Emery's still sick, by the way. She hasn't been in all week. That's another thing I wanted to tell you, that all the orders are backed up right now. Anything that came in from probably last Friday through today, Friday, pretty much has been setting. I don't know. I could have gotten some of those things out myself, but it just seems like I'm just running and chasing my own tail anymore. Cut up on all the orders and get them out by Monday. We typically don't get behind on that stuff. Just Emery being sick, and then the weather not cooperating this week, and just a million other things that popped up. So it was just the perfect storm of getting behind. So here's the other one that I made. It's very similar in a way to this one. It's kind of the same idea, except it's even a little more adjustable. And that is that I took, basically just a piece of pipe, welded it to this square thing here, another piece of pipe that slides over this one, like that, and then you can rotate this. So you can imagine you can tilt, by putting the neck in here, clamping the neck down, you can tilt the body in any direction. You can turn it upside down. You can put it on an angle. You can get the edge of the guitar standing up. And then I just have this as a lockdown screw. It's just threaded here, and it tightens it down, and it can't move then. Same way here, I have this set for more or less a mandolin neck, and I can put this, except when I drop it, then I can just put a block in here, and then I can turn a flat. I can still put a guitar neck in here, or I can, if I need to turn it upside down for some reason, I've got this little filler block. I can't remember exactly why I use the filler block now, but anyway, I have it there if I need it. But anyway, it's just same kind of concept. This one's a little more complex to make, as you can probably tell. This one was super easy to make, but this one does a lot more stuff, so there you go. It's worth showing those every once in a while. I use them quite often too, and Caleb used them a lot when he was here. I don't know if he's made anything like that for his shop yet, but he may down the road. Okay, I think that covers everything that I had on my mind this morning. So let me scroll back up to the top and see if I can see the first question marks. And I think the first ones I see Looks like from Four Oaks Family Homestead. What kind of table vise do you use and where did you get it? Well, I have two main vices here in the shop. Unfortunately, I don't think I can show you a view of those very easily. The one I can kind of demonstrate it here is it's the flush mount type vise that mounts level with your surface, and it's got the big square jaws and it pulls out and you spin it like so, and you know it goes in and out, and it's got a quick release, so you can push this quick release and pull the jaw out real wide, and it's wide enough you can get the whole guitar body in there and then some. You can pull it out pretty far, so it's nice to be able to put the whole guitar body in there, like on the end block, on the tail block. You can clamp down on that and hold it. Of course, you have to put towels in there or something, some kind of padding in there so you don't mar it up. But it works nice, especially if you want to stand it up and you know, be standing to work on something up there at the peg head or whatever. But anyway, so I have that kind of vise, is one vise I use. But believe it or not, I use that vise, that big square flat-jawed vise. I use it for clamping lots of stuff. Like anytime I have a flat piece of veneer, I just stick it in there and it's just easy. Or if I want to laminate something, 2 or 3 pieces together, I can stick it in there, and it's such a good clamp for that kind of purpose. So I use it for a lot of glue ups. I use it probably for glue ups more than I use it for anything anymore. The other vise is just your standard old typical regular vise, and I believe it says Craftsman on it. It's a fairly large one, but it's just your typical standard Craftsman vise. Where I got either one of those, honestly, I couldn't tell you. I've had them for years and years. The Craftsman one, I probably bought it new from Sears, but if I did, it was probably 35 or more years ago. And the other one, the square jaw flat one, I don't know where I got that one from, the one that mounts flush to the table. I just don't recall. It probably came from just a standard woodworking supply place, is what I would imagine. Thanks for the question. The next question here, if it doesn't scroll too fast on me. Clyde Lewis, Jerry, what kind of AC extension table power strip system do you have on your power tools thing? Okay, this here, well, it just says smart electricians is what it says. It's just a long power strip, and I'm pretty sure I just bought it at an electrical, I'm at just a big, you know, box store, hardware store like Menards. I don't know for sure. I bought it at Menards. I might have bought it at Lowe's. Might have bought it at Home Depot. I really don't know. But it's just a long one, and it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 outlets on it. So I've got plenty of places to plug things in. And my bench here, this is just a table is what it is. It's a heavy, heavy table. I got a bunch of heavy steel years and years ago, and then this thick Formica top. Actually, I made this top, but I for my other tables, I got a bunch of real thick, heavy Formica from this. It was just like a salvage company, and they salvaged all this steel and everything, and the pipe for the legs, and I just bought it all there, and then just brought it home and welded it all up and screwed down the Formica to the top, and then so I turned the channels. The flat is facing inward on this one, and the channel is facing out, and I can't remember why I did that, but there was probably a reason, because of probably welding it to the pipe legs, actually, so it's easier to weld a long seam on the inside there. But anyway, that channel just happens to be a good place to mount this strip, so the strip is kind of back in that channel. Nothing real fancy, just a standard old long power strip type deal. Okay, see if I can find another question here. Why is it pronounced Arkansas with an S on the end? Well, some people in Missouri pronounce it Arkansas. Because it's basically spelled like Arkansas. But Yeah, Arkansas, I don't know why, we could get into all kinds of, conversations on that, on those kinds of questions. Let's see. Rob Walker says, "Hi Jerry, the Lohr mandolins have braces. A guy on YouTube said they don't. Is this correct?" Oh, he says, "Do the Lohr," I tell you, I'm not very good at reading. "Do the Lohr mandolins have braces? A guy on YouTube says they don't. Is this correct?" Well, Rob, as embarrassing as it may sound, I don't know. The truth is, I've worked on a lot of Lohrs, and most of the time when I'm working on them, I'm doing setups. So I don't recall looking in them on the inside too much and examining them. And I probably have, but the truth is, I just don't remember, because they all run together on me. I think the funny thing to me, though, is that people they'll come in here like 10 years later and they said, that fiddle I brought you 10 years ago, and I'm going like, nope. Sorry. And it's kind of that way with all of these instruments run together to me. They're just a blur. I just do the job I'm supposed to do, and then they just go down the road, and back when hands were good, I was doing that a lot. I mean, sending instruments through here so fast it'd make your head swim. But anyway, so the truth is, Rob, I'd tell you if I knew, but the honest truth is I just don't know for sure without looking into one of them. I'm sure you could Google it, though. I bet it's out there somewhere. Caleb, he says, "I might have to get out the canoe." Yeah, might have to. I can always get out if it was an emergency. There's ways to get out of here, but it ain't easy and it ain't fun. For one thing, we can drive right down the railroad tracks. And you would probably say, "No, you don't ever do that." Well, the difference is we have special permission anytime it floods that we can drive on these tracks, and these particular tracks only run from right here, right by the farm. They dead end back to Fort Leonard Wood. That's the only place they go. So in other words, where they dead end is they dead end at the main track, and the main track engine comes by, stops, hooks onto the Fort Leonard Wood track and pulls it away. So that's all that the track is used for. So it goes very slowly, number one, because we're right at the end and it's stopping and parking basically whenever it comes through. And then secondarily, they told me anyway, they'll never use the tracks while there is a flood. They just don't do it. So they said, "You're perfectly, they've given me permission, in other words, to just drive right out on the tracks if I have to." So it ain't fun to do that, I'll tell you. It's just not good at all. But that's why we use our four-wheelers to do that. We drive out, we leave our car parked outside, and then drive the four-wheelers down the track if we have to. It works. So Zappa says, "Have you considered building your road and putting in culvert pipes?" All floods, and yeah, there's not a chance. And you're talking a huge valley across there, so you'd have to build it up. Well, you'd have to build it up as high as railroad tracks, which is about another 10 feet higher. So yeah, it's not a chance. Not a chance. Lloyd DeSalt, "Any luck on the guitar? They won't let you finish the finish." You had to bring that up, didn't you, Lloyd? No, and then what happened, I was really dedicated to get it done this week, and I really was. I was going to get it done this week, and then Mother Nature. And when it's really wet like this and really rainy, it's just not the best time to be working on finish. So I did get a little more sanded off and a little more sprayed on. But then the rains came and I just kind of quit working on that because it's not the best time to do that. So I'm waiting until next week on that now. Unfortunately, like I said, it will not let me finish it. It just won't. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. Jose Feliciano. Okay, I'll just take your word for that. I'm looking into getting a crowning file to speed up fret work, possibly easy file from StewMac. Any recommendations? Well, the truth is, Jose, I don't have a lot of experience with the various ones. Actually, I say that, I always go back, I do have a couple of them, but I always go back to the one that I started with. It just works for me, and I just got used to it, and I use it. It's the one with the little interchangeable blades. You know, you like this is what I use right here, and it's got the interchangeable blades here. You just loosen that screw, pop this out, stick this one in. So this would be for the narrow frets, this one's for the wide frets, and it's what I've always used, and it works perfectly fine for me. You know, I don't have a basis of comparison. That's the truth. And so many of you may say, well, you're doing it the hard way. You know, you can use this file. It's much better. Well, fine. Put that in the comments and he'll use it. I'm on the way out. I'm not going to change at this point. There's no point in changing. All right. Let's see. So Jose, I can't give you more information than that. That's all. That's the one I use. And it does work for me. But I can't really make a recommendation, unfortunately. Jerry, I don't know how to pronounce Mr. It Mo DK. Mysterious Mo? I don't know. Anyway, hi Jerry, would you consider making a video about your songwriting, when you started, how you got into it, maybe talking about the inspiration for each song? Well, thank you for that. I've actually had a number, a few don't, but most of them do have a story behind them. And I'm not sure I'd do a whole video on that, but I might. Emery also told me I should do that because she's heard some of the stories and she says, man, that would be interesting. You should make. So maybe I'll do it, especially since you've asked also, but I'll have to think on it a little bit. David Tharp, did you know that the toothbrush was invented in Arkansas? Okay, I'm not going to go there. That was funny, David. Yep, but I'm not going there. I'm not going to say any more about that. Paul Walton, can you describe the process for spraying True Oil as a finish on instruments? Do you have to thin it? Do you leave it in, I do not thin it, Paul Walton. On the True Oil, I leave it just like it is, put it in there, and I strain it every time with a fine paint strainer type strainer, you know, so that, because that True Oil can develop little, I don't know, Klingons or something. It can just develop hard spots and lumps and things in the finish sometimes. So I do strain it, but I spray it on. And honestly, it's not much different on spraying it than it's spraying anything else. The difference for sure, and it is one big difference, is you don't go over it twice. One pass, you know, and when I say one, I'm talking about above and then one below, you know, and you know, you try to hit the whole instrument in one, you know, two passes, and you do overlap them just the least little bit. Of course, you have to, but you don't want to have to go over it a second time, because if you do, it will run. If you just go one time across, and you'll when you first do that the first time, you'll go, hey, that is not enough, you know. It'll smooth out, and I'm telling you, it works. But you got to use that technique. Now, I know that everybody else on the planet says, put it on with a pad, put it on with this, put it on with that, you know, and I've done all of those other techniques. The reason I like the spraying is simply speed. I can do it so much faster, just so much faster. And truthfully, I got runs when I was doing it the other way. So, you know, I don't feel like putting it on by hand was any particular, you know, benefit. And some people say you can rub it into the pores. Well, I don't have any problem getting it to go down in the pores. My problem is when it's drying, it moves away from the pores, you know. but actually the True Oil hasn't been near as much problem with that as, like, say, lacquer. But anyway, that's the best answer I've got for you there, Paul Walton. Hopefully you like that. Mark Parker, are you ever going to build a stand-up bass? Well, Mark, I probably not, but I did, I think I told this story once before on the channel. I did build the whole top for a bass, complete the whole thing, all by hand carved and everything. And you could sort of say, well, you didn't do it totally by hand, by my method, but I'm going to tell you about that since you've asked. I was, believe it or not, this story starts out on the streets of downtown St. Louis, and I mean like where the tall buildings are, skyscraper type buildings. Of course, St. Louis isn't a super high skyscraper city, but we do have our 30 and 40 story buildings down there. And anyway, I was walking along a sidewalk, and I just happened to be going by the store called Famous Bar, which I don't know if that's anywhere else or if that's just here. But anyway, Famous Bar is a multi-floor department store, kind of like a miniature Macy's or something. Anyway, their display that they had in the window was a musical theme. It was clothing and stuff, but it was a musical theme, and one of the mannequins was playing an upright bass. Well, it had been painted with house paint, white house paint, and I just did a U-turn right into the store, and I said, where do I talk to somebody about that window display? And they go, well, that's down in our props department down in the basement. I said, how do I get down there? So I made my way down there. I found the manager of that department, and I told him, I said, hey, what are you going to do with that bass when you're done, And he goes, oh, we'll probably just throw it back here in the corner and maybe use it again someday. And I said, well, would you consider selling it? And he goes, yeah, I'd sell it. I said, how much you want for it? And he goes, I don't know, $75. I said, sold, I'll take it. Well, I couldn't see it real well, but when I did finally, he said, you'll have to come back in 2 weeks when we're done with it, with that window, and then you can take it then. So I did. I came back, and I got it. And when I saw it up close, I went, wow, that's in really, really, really bad shape. And the top, you could have salvaged it. You can salvage anything, but it wasn't even worth my trouble to scrape it off. By the time I'd have scraped all the white house paint off of it, I could have built the new top, which is what I did. I actually went to a hardware store, and I don't remember which one. I kind of think it was Lowe's, but it might have even been the old Central Hardware in the Baldwin, Missouri area. Anyway, I went to the hardware store, and I just picked out Western cedar boards, and I picked 6 wide, I think. And I picked out enough to go across that would work all the way across the top, and I made sure that they were as quarter sawn as I could get. And anyway, so I just glued up a bunch of big boards and went to town carving, and I could quickly see that the hand carving, like I hand carve a mandolin with the finger plane, and I was using my bigger finger plane like this, but I could quickly see that was going to take like a lifetime and maybe a little bit more. And so my brother happened to be passing through, not the one that plays music, my brother who is the super master carpenter. His name is Steve. And I said, how would you carve this? I said, how would you? He says, I'd take a skill saw to it. I said, a skill saw? He goes, yeah, you just hold the guard open and you just, you rake it like this, And I can't demonstrate it real well, but basically you hold the skill saw, the blade is running this way, and you just take the skill saw and you just run the blade wide open and you just rake it like this, And I thought, what the heck, it ain't gonna come. I still have all my fingers. And so I did. And believe it or not, it worked. Of course, the 2020 is the best vision you'll ever have, it's a Monday morning quarterback thing. I had 2020 vision on Monday whenever I got done with carving it, and that is that it threw sawdust everywhere. because of that blade whirling like this, it threw sawdust up on, the whole shop was covered in sawdust. So in hindsight, I would have done it outside, and that would have been a lot smarter. But anyway, I got it rough carved with the skill saw. Then I took the little hand planes and chisels and whatever I needed, scrapers and the whole bit, and I finished it. Well, then, I had to fix the rest of the base. There was parts broken and, everything. Everything on the base needed something. Like the scrolls, the sides, got it all fixed up. Looked pretty darn good, really. And sounded like $1 million, because that Western cedar top, oh man, it was killer. It really was. The sound on it was just killer. It really was good. And so I just thought I'd keep it. I don't really play a bass, but I just put it in the corner of the shop there and thought, a conversation piece type thing. Well, in walks a college student one day. He sees that bass there. He goes, "I'm majoring in music. What would you take for this bass?" Now, keep in mind, I paid $75 for it, plus a little bit for that wood and a lot of labor. So now, this is back in the early 80s, you have to understand. And to me, I was for that. He goes, "I'll take it." Just like that. And it left. And I didn't want to sell it. It was like, why did I even price it? Doggone it, But I'm a man of my word. If I price something and you say you'll take it, well, it's a deal, and I'm just going to go with it. I still kick myself over that one. That was a bad deal. But at the time, $1,000 for a bass like that was quite a bit. But yeah, you'd probably have to spend $3,500 to get one that sounded like that now. It may be more than that, maybe $5,000 or more. Anyway, it is what it is. But that's my story. Oh, by the way, technically I didn't pay anything for it because they never did cash my $75 check. It never did clear the bank. So I never did. So technically I got it free. Okay, enough on that story. Let me move back up here, and Jose Feliciano says, "That is actually my name." Well, you're famous, Are you the real Jose? So there, Mark Parker asked about the stand-up bass. Rob Walker, "Hi Jerry, I'll let you know if the lower mandolins have braces, as I've ordered one." Okay, Rob. Yeah, I don't remember. I would have guessed they do, but I don't know that for sure. I don't, like I told everybody before, and you can hold it against me if you want to, but I don't study these things. There's no point in it for me. There's no benefit to me whatsoever. And people have said, "You need to know what you're working on. How do you work on it if you don't know?" And I'm going, well, how does a mechanic, fix a tire? He doesn't have to know who made the tire. He doesn't have to know what kind of engine's in the car to fix the tire. And that's the way it is with me. I just fix what I need to fix, and then I send it on down the road, There are times, if I was working on a super vintage instrument like a Lloyd Loar, I would do some research. But, on your average lower mandolin, you don't need to do that research. Okay. Zappa1 PNT says, "Jerry, do you put polishing compound on your knife strop?" No, I don't, but it wouldn't probably hurt anything. Like I said, my polishing compound becomes the oil and the grit that comes right off of this stone. And in fact, when I'm done with both of them, I always lay this with the leather side down right on top of the stone like that. And so it soaks up whatever's left into the leather. So that's my polishing compound, if you will. And it's a very fine, way to hone a blade. It really does work really well. Reg D, "Did you learn music by ear or in school?" Reg D, what I know about formal music, you could put in a thimble, and that's probably exaggerating on the big side. I know nothing about formal music. I truly don't. Probably less than almost anybody watching this. you know, I've heard terms. I know treble clef and bass clef, and, you know, I mean, I could kind of recognize those things if I saw them, but I wouldn't know what to do with them. And like notes and things, same way. I mean, I recognize them, and I know FACE is the spaces or whatever, and ED. You pretty much heard everything I know about formal music right there. So that ought to tell you, I learned it by ear, yes. In fact, I'm totally 100% self-taught. I never really even, you know, like sat with anybody to say, how do you do this, how do you do that, you know, that kind of thing. I just figured it out on my own pretty much, which is partly why I play so weird compared to most people. Joe McGraw, are you using a small artist airbrush when spraying the True Oil? No, I'm using a full-size you know, a DeVilbiss. DeVilbiss, I think is how you pronounce that, DEVILBISS, something like that, DeVilbiss. That's all I use is just a standard sprayer. You probably could get by with an airbrush. You know, you just... Again, just have to be careful not to put it on too thick. Are you, let's see, I'm sorry. A clever move to do the live talk at this time. Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We have I was just going to say we have 154, and as I started to say that, it jumped to 175. I don't know. So that's about average, or slightly on the low average, because around 200 is what I like to figure that we get most of the time. We get real close to 200, or a little above it sometimes, a little below it sometimes. Let's see, moving on here. BH Ringer, hello from Nova Scotia. Well, hello. Have you ever performed in Scotland? No, we haven't. We were going to, but... COVID said, sorry. That's just kind of like my typical luck. You know, something has to happen every time whenever we get an option to do something. Perhaps Shetland Folk Festival or Edinburgh. No, J.P. Cormier is playing at Edinburgh gig tonight. Yeah, well, it would be fun gig. Now, when we were based out of St. Louis, which is, of course, a much bigger population area, we would often, in many years, play more than 40 weekends a year. You know, there's 52 weekends a year, and we would play like 42 or 3 weekends a year, you know, and sometimes 3 and 4 and 5 shows per weekend. So we were busy playing all the time. But nowadays, if the phone rings, and that's the way it always was. We would only, if the phone rang, we'd go play. But if the phone didn't ring, we'd stay home, you know, and that's why we probably weren't booked on those other few weekends. But I never did call a single person ever one time to get a gig. I just let word of mouth handle it. And so that's the way it works with me. I don't pursue gigs, and that's why we never play very many festivals, because there's just so many people chomping at the bit to get into festivals, and we hardly ever play festivals because I don't pursue that. Moving on here. Rusty Mohican. Rusty Mohican. Is it worth it to remove poly and refinish with nitro? Yeah. I don't know, Rusty. I kind of doubt it. You know, you might hear a difference. You might not hear that big of a difference. And I would say it would depend on the instrument and the value of the instrument and all those kinds of things. But it's a lot of work. Trust me, to refinish an instrument, of all the things I do, that's the one thing I probably dread more than anything, is doing the finish work. It's the hardest part of it. People think that building them and carving and the setup work and all that, that's way harder than the actual construction of the instrument. The construction of the instrument, I'm seriously telling you, is not that hard. It's the rest of it that's hard. And even if maybe hard's not the right word, the construction of the instrument is not that time consuming. The rest of it is time consuming. So call it hard if you want, but I kind of use that synonymous with time consuming. Let's see, do you have any plans to bring in another apprentice? Absolutely not, because I am slowing everything down intentionally. Yeah. Do you believe it even at that? Who knows what it really is? Well, I think that's about all I got here. We're at 2:30, which means that we've been doing this for a full hour. So I think I just answered the last question. I do really appreciate you all being here today, and hope you got something out of it today. And thank you for being so nice to me, so kind to me, and thanks for all those super chats. I really appreciate it very much. We'll see you probably Monday on the next vlog.